You didn't heal. You just learned how to hide it. And the scariest part? It worked. You became functional. That's what they call it. You learned how to smile when something inside you felt off. You learned how to say, I'm fine, even when you weren't. You learned how to keep going, no matter what you felt. And over time, that became your identity. Not someone who healed, but someone who adapted, someone who survived, someone who learned how to not show it, because showing it didn't feel safe. At some point, you realized something, that your emotions were not always welcomed, not always understood, not always safe to express. So you adjusted, quietly, gradually. You stopped saying certain things. You stopped reacting in certain ways. You stopped expressing certain feelings. And instead, you contained them. You held them in. You pushed them down. Because that felt easier, safer, more acceptable. And that's where it started. Not the healing, but the hiding. You didn't process what you felt. You managed it. You controlled it. You avoided it. And from the outside, it looked like growth. You became calmer, more controlled, less reactive, more mature. But inside, nothing was resolved, only suppressed. And what is suppressed does not disappear. It waits. It stays. It builds. And it finds other ways to express itself. Because according to Carl Jung, what you resist does not go away. It becomes part of you. Unconsciously, it shapes how you think, how you feel, how you react, without you realizing it. So now, you don't feel everything directly, but you feel it indirectly. Through patterns, you overthink, without knowing why. You feel anxious, without a clear reason. You shut down, in situations that shouldn't feel overwhelming. You pull away, when things start to feel real, and you don't always understand it. Because on the surface, everything seems fine. But beneath that surface, something is unresolved. Something hasn't been faced. Something hasn't been felt fully. And that something is still active, still influencing you, still shaping your behavior, even now. And this is where the confusion begins. Because you've learned how to function, so you assume you've healed. You've learned how to cope, so you assume you've moved on. You've learned how to manage your emotions, so you assume they no longer affect you. But managing is not healing. Functioning is not resolving. Avoiding is not understanding. And the difference shows up in subtle ways. In your relationships, in your reactions, in the way you respond to certain situations. You get triggered, and you don't know why. You feel something intense, and it doesn't match the moment. You react strongly to something small, and then question yourself after. Why did I feel that way? Why did I react like that? Because the reaction is not just about the present. It's connected to something older, something deeper, something you've been carrying without fully realizing it. And that's what makes it difficult, because it's not obvious. It's not always clear. It's not something you can easily point to. It's embedded in your patterns, in your responses, in your automatic reactions, and you've gotten used to it. So it feels normal. It feels like this is just who I am. But it's not who you are. It's what you learned to protect yourself, to survive, to function in environments where you couldn't fully be yourself. And that protection was necessary. At the time, it helped you. It kept you safe. It allowed you to move forward. But what once protected you can now limit you, because the pattern stayed. Even when the situation changed, you're no longer in the same environment, but your responses are still shaped by it. You're reacting to the present with the same strategies you developed in the past. And that creates a disconnect, because your life has moved forward, but parts of you are still operating from before, still holding on to what was never processed, still reacting as if it's still happening. And that's where the tension comes from. That feeling that something is off, even when everything seems fine. That sense of being disconnected from yourself, from your emotions, from your reactions, because part of you is hidden, not gone, not healed, hidden. And hiding takes energy, constant energy, to maintain the image, to stay in control. to not let anything slip. And over time, that becomes exhausting, even if you don't fully notice it, because you're always managing something, always containing something, always keeping something in place. And that's not freedom. That's control. Control built on avoidance, not understanding. And eventually, that control starts to crack, not all at once, but gradually, in moments, in reactions, in feelings that come up unexpectedly. And when they do, it feels overwhelming because it's everything you didn't allow yourself to feel before, coming up at once, without preparation, without understanding. And that's when most people get confused. They think something is wrong, something is broken, because they thought they had moved on. They thought they had healed. But what they were experiencing was not failure. It was exposure. Exposure of what was never processed, never understood, never integrated. And that's where real healing begins. Not in hiding, not in controlling, not in avoiding, but in facing, in allowing, in understanding what has been there all along. Because you didn't heal, you learn how to hide it. And until you stop hiding it, it will keep showing up in ways you don't fully understand. Hiding doesn't remove the wound. It reshapes it. It teaches it to exist quietly, in the background, where you don't have to look at it directly, but you still feel it, in subtle ways, in your reactions, in your relationships, in the way you respond to things that shouldn't feel so heavy, but do. And over time, that hidden part of you begins to organize your life. Without you realizing it, you start making decisions based on what feels safe, not what feels true. You avoid certain conversations, certain situations, certain people, not because you consciously choose to, but because something inside you feels uncomfortable, and you've learned to move away from that feeling without questioning it, without understanding it. And that's how the pattern continues. Quietly, automatically, unconsciously. You don't see it as avoidance. You see it as preference. This just isn't for me. I don't like this kind of situation. I'd rather stay where I'm comfortable. But comfort is not always alignment. Sometimes it's protection. Protection from something older, something deeper, something unresolved. And this is where things become complex. Because what once protected you now limits you. The same patterns that helped you survive now keep you from fully living. You learn to stay quiet. So now you struggle to express yourself. You learn to suppress emotions. So now you struggle to feel them. You learn to not rely on others. So now you struggle to trust them. And none of this feels intentional. It feels natural, automatic. Like this is just who I am. But it's not who you are. It's what you adapted to. And according to Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And you will call it fate. And that's exactly what happens. You repeat patterns without realizing you're repeating them. You feel the same emotions in different situations with different people, and it feels like coincidence, like bad luck, like this always happens to me. But it's not random. It's patterned, driven by something beneath the surface, something you haven't fully seen yet. And that's what makes it so difficult, because you can't change what you don't see. You can't shift what you don't understand. So you keep trying to fix things externally, change your environment, change the people around you, change your routine. But the pattern follows you because it's internal, not external. And until you turn inward, nothing fully changes. It just looks different, but feels the same. And this is where most people stay stuck. Not because they're not trying, but because they're trying in the wrong direction. They're trying to fix the surface without addressing the root. And the root is not in your current situation. It's in what you've been carrying, what you've been avoiding, what you've learned to hide. Because hiding doesn't resolve anything. It delays it. It stores it. It keeps it active beneath your awareness until something triggers it, until something touches it. And when that happens, the reaction feels immediate, strong, out of proportion, because it's not just about the moment. It's about everything connected to it, everything that hasn't been processed, coming forward at once. And that's why it feels overwhelming. Not because you're weak, but because it's accumulated, layered, built over time, without being released, without being understood. And when it finally surfaces, it demands attention. But most people still try to manage it, control it, push it back down, because facing it feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, even threatening. Because now, you're not just dealing with the present, you're dealing with the past, with parts of yourself you've kept hidden for a long time. And that's where resistance shows up. You feel the discomfort, and your instinct is to escape, to distract, to move away from it. Because that's what you've always done. That's what kept you functioning. That's what kept things stable. But now, that same response keeps you stuck because you're avoiding the very thing that needs your attention, your awareness, your understanding. And this is the turning point, the moment where you realize that what you've been doing is not healing, it's managing, it's controlling, it's avoiding. And real healing is something else entirely. It's not about controlling what you feel. It's about allowing it, understanding it, working through it, without immediately trying to change it. And that requires something difficult, staying present in discomfort, without escaping it, without shutting it down, without distracting yourself from it. And that's where the challenge is, because you've trained yourself to do the opposite, to move away, to avoid, to suppress. But now, you have to do something different. You have to stay with what you feel long enough to understand it, to trace it back, to see where it comes from, what it's connected to, what it's been trying to show you all along. And that process is not immediate. It's gradual. It takes time, attention, honesty, the willingness to look without turning away. And that's what begins to shift things. Not instantly, but steadily. Because now, you're no longer hiding. You're no longer avoiding. You're starting to see what has always been there. And once you see it, you can begin to understand it. And once you understand it, you can begin to change it. Not by force, but by awareness. And that awareness is what breaks the pattern. Not completely, not all at once, but enough to create something new, something more conscious, more aligned, more real. Because now, you're not just reacting, you're understanding. And that changes everything. The moment you stop hiding, everything you avoided begins to surface. Not gently, not neatly, but all at once. Thoughts you've been pushing away, emotions you've been holding in, memories you never fully processed. They don't disappear just because you ignored them. They wait until you're still enough, quiet enough, aware enough to feel them. And when they come up, it can feel overwhelming because you're not just feeling the present, you're feeling everything that was never felt before, layered, accumulated, unresolved. And this is where most people turn back. They feel the intensity and think something is wrong. I was doing better. I thought I moved on. Why is this coming back? But nothing is coming back. It never left. It was just hidden. And now, it's visible. And visibility feels like regression. But it's not. It's exposure. And exposure is the beginning of healing. Because you cannot heal what you do not see. You cannot understand what you do not allow yourself to feel. And this is what Carl Jung pointed toward. Not avoiding the unconscious, but bringing it into awareness. Facing it, understanding it, integrating it, instead of pretending it's not there. Because what is hidden doesn't stop influencing you. It just does it quietly, in your reactions, in your triggers, in your patterns. And when it finally surfaces, it's not to break you. It's to show you what has been there all along. And that moment requires something most people avoid. Staying with the discomfort, without escaping it, without distracting yourself from it, without immediately trying to fix it. Because your instinct will be to control it, to manage it, to make it go away. But healing does not happen through control. It happens through understanding, through allowing yourself to fully experience what you once avoided. And that is difficult, because now you're not just observing, you're feeling. And feeling means vulnerability. It means letting your guard down, letting the emotions come up, without suppressing them, without pushing them away. And that can feel unfamiliar, even unsafe, because for a long time, you learn the opposite, to stay in control, to not let things get to you, to keep everything contained. But that containment is what kept everything inside, unresolved. And now, it's asking to be released, not through reaction, but through awareness, through understanding, through presence. You feel something, and instead of shutting it down, you stay with it. You ask yourself, what is this really about? Where have I felt this before? What does this remind me of? And those questions begin to connect the present to the past. They reveal the root, not just the reaction. And when you see that, something shifts, because now you're not just reacting to the feeling, you're understanding it. You're seeing where it comes from, what it's connected to, why it feels so intense. And that understanding reduces the confusion. It brings clarity, because now the reaction makes sense. It's not random. It's not too much. It's connected to something that mattered, something that affected you, something that was never fully processed. And when you see that, you stop judging yourself. You stop asking, why am I like this? And start asking, what happened that made me respond this way? And that question changes everything, because now you're not fighting yourself. You're understanding yourself. You're not trying to eliminate what you feel. You're learning from it, working through it, instead of pushing it away. And that process begins to integrate those parts of you, the parts you once hid, the parts you avoided, the parts you didn't want to face. They become visible, understandable, less overwhelming, because now they are no longer hidden. They are part of your awareness. And awareness reduces their power, not instantly, but gradually, because you are no longer running. You are facing, you are staying, you are understanding, and that creates something new, not control, but connection. Connection to yourself, to your emotions, to your experiences, without avoidance, without suppression, without hiding. And that connection is what you were missing, not strength, not control, but understanding. Because control kept you functioning, but understanding allows you to heal. And healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming whole, bringing together the parts of you that were separated, ignored, hidden, and allowing them to exist without rejection, without judgment. And that is what changes your life, not instantly, but deeply, because now you are no longer divided between what you show and what you hide. You are integrated, aware, present with yourself. And from that place, everything shifts. Your reactions, your relationships, your choices, because they are no longer driven by what you avoided, but guided by what you understand. And that is the difference between hiding and healing. Healing doesn't happen when the pain disappears. It happens when you stop running from it. Because the truth is, you can spend years looking okay, functioning, smiling, moving forward, and still be carrying something unresolved, something that quietly shapes your life from the background. And the longer you carry it, the more it defines you, not in obvious ways, but in subtle ones, in what you tolerate, in what you avoid, in what you believe about yourself, without ever questioning it. And this is where real healing begins. Not when everything feels better, but when you become aware of what you've been carrying and choose to face it consciously, because awareness is what interrupts the pattern. It creates space between what you feel and how you respond. And in that space, you are no longer trapped in the same automatic reactions. You have a choice to do something different, to respond in a way that aligns with who you are now, not who you had to be before. And that distinction is everything, because the version of you that learned to hide was trying to survive, trying to protect you, trying to make sense of something difficult, and that version did what it needed to do. But you are no longer there. You are no longer in the same place, the same environment, the same situation, but your responses have stayed the same. And that creates a conflict between where you are now and how you still react. And that's why it feels confusing, because part of you knows you're safe instead of pushing it away. And that process begins to integrate those parts of you, the parts you once hid, the parts you avoided, the parts you didn't want to face. They become visible, understandable, less overwhelming, because now they are no longer hidden. They are part of your awareness. And awareness reduces their power, not instantly, but gradually, because you are no longer running. You are facing, you are staying, you are understanding, and that creates something new, not control, but connection. Connection to yourself, to your emotions, to your experiences, without avoidance, without suppression, without hiding. And that connection is what you were missing, not strength, not control, but understanding. Because control kept you functioning, but understanding allows you to heal. And healing is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming whole, bringing together the parts of you that were separated, ignored, hidden, and allowing them to exist without rejection, without judgment. And that is what changes your life, not instantly, but deeply, because now you are no longer divided between what you show and what you hide. You are integrated, aware, present with yourself. And from that place, everything shifts. Your reactions, your relationships, your choices, because they are no longer driven by what you avoided, but guided by what you understand. And that is the difference between hiding and healing. Healing doesn't happen when the pain disappears. It happens when you stop running from it. Because the truth is, you can spend years looking okay, functioning, smiling, moving forward, and still be carrying something unresolved, something that quietly shapes your life from the background. And the longer you carry it, the more it defines you, not in obvious ways, but in subtle ones, in what you tolerate, in what you avoid, in what you believe about yourself, without ever questioning it. And this is where real healing begins. Not when everything feels better, but when you become aware of what you've been carrying and choose to face it consciously, because awareness is what interrupts the pattern. It creates space between what you feel and how you respond. And in that space, you are no longer trapped in the same automatic reactions. You have a choice to do something different, to respond in a way that aligns with who you are now, not who you had to be before. And that distinction is everything, because the version of you that learned to hide was trying to survive, trying to protect you, trying to make sense of something difficult. And that version did what it needed to do. But you are no longer there. You are no longer in the same place, the same environment, the same situation, but your responses have stayed the same. And that creates a conflict between where you are now and how you still react. And that's why it feels confusing, because part of you knows you're safe, but another part still reacts as if you're not. And healing is what bridges that gap. It brings those parts together. It updates your responses. It allows your mind and body to recognize that things are different now. And that process takes repetition, not perfection. You don't face everything at once. You don't resolve everything instantly. You do it in moments, small moments, where you choose awareness instead of avoidance. You feel something uncomfortable, and instead of pushing it away, you stay. You allow it. You understand it without rushing to fix it. And that moment changes something, because now you are not reinforcing the old pattern. You are creating a new one, a pattern of presence, of awareness, of honesty with yourself. And the more you repeat that, the more natural it becomes. You begin to trust yourself, not because nothing affects you, but because you know you can handle what comes up. You can sit with it, work through it, understand it, without losing control. And that self-trust is what creates stability, not external stability, but internal, because now you are not afraid of your own emotions. You are not trying to suppress them or avoid them. You are able to experience them without being overwhelmed. And that changes your entire life, because now you are not reacting from the past. You are responding in the present. You are not hiding parts of yourself. You are aware of them and able to work with them. And that awareness creates alignment between who you are and how you live, because you are no longer driven by unconscious patterns. You are guided by understanding, by clarity, by connection to yourself. And that connection is what most people are missing. Not strength, not discipline, but awareness of what is actually happening within them. And without that awareness, they keep repeating the same patterns, the same reactions, the same experiences, without knowing why. But once you become aware, once you understand what you've been carrying and how it has been shaping your life, you can begin to change it, not by force, but by choice, by choosing again and again to face what you feel instead of hiding from it, to understand it instead of suppressing it, to stay present instead of escaping. And over time, that becomes your default, not avoidance, but awareness, not hiding, but honesty with yourself. And that honesty is what heals, not perfectly, not all at once, but deeply, because now you are no longer living from what you've been avoiding. You are living from what you understand. And that is what transforms everything, not the world around you, but your experience within it. Because you didn't heal, you learned how to hide it. But now you're choosing something different. You're choosing to see, to understand, to face what has always been there. And that choice is what finally allows you to heal. If this hits something in you, don't ignore it. That discomfort you feel right now, that's not weakness. That's awareness. Because according to Carl Jung, what you don't face will quietly control your life, and you won't even realize it. So stop telling yourself you've healed when you've only learned how to hide it. Be honest with yourself, not the version you show the world, the one you keep avoiding, because that's where the real work is. Not in looking okay, but in being real. So here's the question. Are you ready to actually face it, or keep running from it? If you're ready to understand yourself on a deeper level, subscribe, because this isn't about becoming perfect. It's about finally becoming honest with what's really inside you.